Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever this podcast may find you. It is I, as always, Gavin.
And I, Justin.
And look at that. We're in the same room at the same time again.
It's been like a month.
It has been like a month. A lot has happened. You went off to Canadian land.
I went off to Canadian land in a Tesla, of all things.
Yeah, and on this episode of the podcast, we actually look at cars that have sold on Bring a Trailer and have seen if they have kept up with the stock market or inflation with the current Bring a Trailer craziness. So
there were some surprises.
There are a couple of surprises, so let's just dive right into that.
And just like that, we're back.
We're back!
Or at least I'm back.
Well, you're back. I've been back, but this is the first time in almost a month that we've seen each other in person.
Yeah, we've both had just a lot going on and needed the break from the regular commute up here on your end. And
I mean, that's true.
Yeah. Because it's a lot to come up here to do this podcast for just generally a couple hours or something like that.
Well, normally also when we've done this, we've also spent the rest of the day editing or something.
Yeah. So we got to a point where it's cool, let's just do some remote ones.
Let's do some remote ones. We got to do some back-to-back remote ones recently, to cover your trip, which I'm eager to hear about.
Yes.
Want to just dive right into that?
So there's a lot of interesting things. I'll set the stage first. So me and my fiancée, Bryce, because he works in retail, we couldn't really take a honeymoon during December. It's just not a
retail?
thing.
Time off? December?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. It's just not a thing that would happen.
It doesn't happen.
So
having worked retail myself.
And at the same time, there was a convention that I wanted to go to. I'm a big computer guy, so Linus,
fucking nerd.
I am. So Linus Tech Tips is a channel that I follow. It's not my favorite channel, but he's one of the largest.
They're also fucking huge.
They're huge.
Yeah.
100+ people in his staff now because they have...
It's him and Marquez that are the de facto tech YouTubers.
The difference is, though, their operations are pretty different. Marquez is still pretty slim. He's 20 people or so.
Oh, yeah. Linus is a huge operation.
At this point, they are a production studio.
Yeah.
Because they have 10 channels. They produce all their own merch. They have their whole thing called Creator Warehouse actually is designed to help creators make merch.
How many channels are under the umbrella?
10.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Marquez he has his YouTube channel. He has a podcast.
And then he has one more, a side channel.
Yeah, he does car stuff, too.
Yep, exactly.
Which I find interesting.
Yeah.
It's mostly EVs.
It's mostly EVs, yeah. Which is also not surprising.
No.
No. But they, up until COVID, held a tech expo every year. That was really cool because it's not just computer stuff. It's anything tech and a big melting pot and obviously they had to ditch it for COVID. They finally were able to bring it back this year. But what's cool...
Oh, 2023 is the first year it came back.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They planned it last year, but I think there was still some hiccups with the Vancouver Convention Center. They just couldn't do it.
Gotcha.
So this was the first year back, and they also integrated it with a big LAN party for the first time. So 400-person LAN party.
Oh, my God.
Plus first time coming back. So I wanted to do that. So I kind of was hang on. We need a vacation in general. We also need a honeymoon, and I want to go up here. We both got our passports during COVID. This is up in Canada. I've never been to Vancouver.
Yeah.
So we kind of compiled all this together, and then on top of that, we're thinking about potentially in the next year or two having Bryce's car replaced with an EV.
Oh, yeah, true.
Because he's kind of the perfect fit for it, given how he drives and whatnot, and his work also has a free charger, so it's kind of...
Oh, awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so we also had the wild idea looking at Hertz recently to rent a Tesla because Hertz, back in 2021, signed a huge agreement with Tesla to get 100,000 Teslas into their fleet.
Wow.
And so right now, they've just started rolling out in about the past year, so they're really cheap. So we got it for $700 for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So really cheap, especially considering it's definitely a few grades above a normal rental car.
Sure.
And so we kind of decided to throw it all into one and really make this trip super interesting.
You checked a lot of boxes with this one.
So first time leaving the country for him, first time with me visiting Vancouver, first time going to this convention, first time doing, honestly, having any noteworthy time in an EV in general, let alone a road trip.
Right, right.
So we stacked all this stuff up and did enough pre-planning to be okay, we should be safe, but it'll be interesting to try to figure this out. So first hiccup we found was that being that we don't own the Tesla, we're stuck with the credit card. We cannot use the app in any way, shape, or form because it's kind of like an Apple ID. It ties to the car,
account.
To your account and whatnot. Yeah. So we didn't have a few features. Number one, like the auto unlocking, locking, starting and whatnot. So you always
That's probably for the better.
Yeah, I think so. And you always have to tap the card in the center console area to start it, which was really kind of annoying. That was honestly the worst downside. Tapping it on the door to unlock, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, because you just want to get in and touch a button and go.
Yeah, especially because one of the auto magic things about Tesla is there's no ignition. You just hit the brake and go. So we didn't have that. We also found out, which this is fine, we added it up so we can audit it. Superchargers also charge through the app. So fortunately, they do allow you to use superchargers, but you just get rebilled afterwards for however much you used.
So we're okay. I'm curious to hear what that number was.
Yeah, and so I'll get to that in the end. So those were really the two downsides of renting the Hertz. Everything else is fairly normal Tesla.
Sure.
The third was a surprise, which is that it's actually a fairly loaded Model 3.
That's good.
It has the rear heated seats.
Wait, 3 or Y?
Sorry, Y. It was supposed to be a 3. That's another funny thing.
Yeah.
Because we needed a long range, and it was either 3 long range or Y long range. We paid for a 3, but they weren't able to get us a 3, so they got us Y.
Perfect.
So it has the rear heated seats, it has the premium sound, it has the full self-driving computer capabilities, which doesn't exist yet, as we all know.
Sure.
But like it has the capability.
Uh-huh.
So it's basically a fully loaded Model Y,
Gotcha.
Which was kind of a surprise. It's a rental car. I wasn't expecting that.
What's MSRP on a fully loaded Model Y?
I think around 60. Let me actually check because
it's got to be more than that, isn't it?
It may very well be.
They might. I should know. We should know.
Yeah. Well, also, it's difficult to find out what Tesla prices actually are.
Well, yeah, because they're never consistent.
Well,
like everything else with Elon.
Yes, and they do two things, which are really stupid. Number one is they do, for instance, I just pulled this up. Let me.
Wasn't a Model S? Didn't they have it just for the lulz one time? 69,420.
I think they did. That's not surprising.
Jesus.
40,000 after tax credit is the MSRP. So yeah,
that's base.
Yeah, so you have to add 7,500 back into there to get to what you're actually sort of paying.
Right.
So like 47,750 is base effectively.
Yeah.
And then if I actually order now, purchase price.
I'm trying to roll my eyes to the minimal amount.
Yes, so 50,490 is the bottom for a Model Y long range. Ours is white, which it's actually $1,000 upgrade. I'm surprised. So again, it's not a base car.
How much does it cost to curb the wheels? Because yours are fucked.
Oh, dude.
It's still here, by the way. He hasn't returned it yet, so I have seen the car.
We're returning it tomorrow morning, and I took a video of it because it's like, oh my God, somebody went to town on the wheels.
Yeah.
They also have the upgrade.
Who knows? They might have had autopilot on. So,
I know, right? They had the upgraded wheels, too. So, like, that's a $2,000 option. So, it's kind of funny. The more I'm adding this in, it has the tow hitch, but it's hidden under the thing right now, which I was also surprised. 5 seats, yes. Black interior. Enhanced autopilot, it does have that. It does have the full self-driving.
$15,000 for literally nothing.
Yes, and
I would rather order a Porsche with PTS and still go gray. That's a better use of your money than $15,000 on nothing.
Nothing at the moment. And who knows when it will be nothing. Okay, so 71. So actually, it's a pretty loaded car.
Yeah, I was thinking between 60 and 70.
So pretty loaded car, and it even has the full connectivity. So it has data, it has Netflix and shit like that. So like
you has Netflix because you can because you don't have to drive.
Well. So yeah, in the infotainment, it has access to pretty much any streaming app you can think of: Netflix, Disney Plus, all that stuff. And it has games, which actually I totally agree with it because it actually has the same.
Agree with what?
The fact that those exist, because it's mainly they introduced those a few years ago to reduce boredom with the fact you would have to supercharge. It's not a long time; it's 20, 30 minutes, but like.
But is it enabled while driving?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
No, it's completely disabled while driving.
That's good.
But the thing is that these cars, unlike normal cars, they have a central processor, which is actually almost identical to the one that's in your computer at home that I built you.
Funny.
It's a Ryzen 7, just like that.
Funny.
And so they have the processing power to do it. So they just started integrating these things. And if you get, side note, if you get to a Model S or a Model X, they have a much larger processor, so they can actually run Steam and actual games that you can download.
My God.
Anyways, so it was a fully loaded car, but we basically set out with a car that allegedly should do 320 miles, the Model Y long range.
There was actually just an article that came out about Tesla and range. I don't know if you've seen this.
So, yes, I think I actually saw that exact article.
Okay.
So, a couple notes on that, which we very quickly found out. We averaged, I'm going to say comfortable range. It's not total. We could have gone further. Comfortably, we averaged between 160 to 200 miles.
Oh, my God. That little? With how much left in the battery?
That was going from around anywhere from 85 to 90 down to 15 to 20.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's a couple factors involved with that.
Yep.
Number one, Idaho and wind.
Yep.
Number two, speed. We were keeping a pretty good pace,
Like what?
like 80 to 85.
Okay.
So and those do have, it's a lot bigger of a bell curve with an EV, how much more.
Oh, totally. With more wind resistance when it comes to both your speed, if you're getting crosswinds or headwind.
Yep.
It's a big thing.
And then the third thing is kind of what tied into that article. I found out, and it's not just a Tesla thing. Tesla just does it a little more egregiously than others. How the EPA rates EV estimated range is kind of flawed.
I think we're talking about two different things then.
Okay.
Because the thing that I just saw recently was Tesla, through their display, advertising a more so between for the top 50% of the battery.
Yeah.
It was showing as more optimistic.
Yes.
There, and then it never truly meeting reality, but it would get a little bit more you could say accurate, but being exceedingly optimistic towards the top end to say, 350, 400?
I disabled that because that was in the same article I read, was that when they're doing the mileage estimate, because you can just tap on the battery thing and have either it say mileage or have it say percentage. If you're in the mileage section, it is woefully inaccurate.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And
on the optimistic side.
Very on the optimistic side.
Which is, potentially dangerous.
It is. And it's funny because on the EPA side, like I mentioned just a second ago, the EPA's methodology is also a little flawed with how they rate EV range, because they use the same percentages that they use to do internal combustion cars, which is 55% city, 45% highway, to get that estimate.
Sure.
The thing is, an EV, similar to a hybrid, is much more efficient in the city because the motor, being it just is a motor that has no gears, when you're doing city driving, especially if you're being kind of light on it, it only has to spin that motor at a certain RPM. It's hard to get going, but then once it's going, it's pretty easy because it's not moving very fast.
Their energy usage is more dependent on actual motor speed rather than the load.
Exactly.
Unlike with gas engine cars that also have gearboxes and transmissions and differentials, the more, I was going to say valves, but I guess valves, but the more the injectors open, you're dumping more fuel.
Whereas, with an EV, if you think about internal combustion, if your foot's at like 20% throttle or so to keep an 80-mile-an-hour speed, that 20% throttle is always the same because it's opening the throttle plate that much. In an EV, that pedal has a completely different bell curve effectively for whatever speed you're going at. So pushing the same amount of pedal down in an EV, you're probably using more electricity because it has to spin that motor at 7,000 RPM constantly, not, 1,000 or whatever. So you end up getting a lot less on the freeway. So because they kept the same percentages of freeway and city driving, it kind of flaws where their estimations come from in general, and then Tesla makes it worse by compounding that range estimation on top of it. So the funny thing is, though, as we noticed, as we're starting to experience these things, the navigation is much smarter than that when it comes to the supercharging. In fact, it is quite surprising. And this was kind of the first thing I realized where I got to experience, okay, this is why people like these. It is very smart at knowing what you will do. There's only one time we had any form of range anxiety, which was we had 50 miles to go and we were at like 15% battery. And that's about as low as we got. But that was dropping into Pendleton where we had a massive downhill. So it already knew that was coming up.
And that makes sense.
And so we could regen the whole way down.
Yeah.
So even though it was nerve-wracking for a moment, it basically sorted itself out. And so it's funny that the range on the main display is so woefully inaccurate, but the actual navigation is very good.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think that's still necessarily a good thing because, first of all, both should be the same. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have to go digging through any kind of navigation, in my opinion, to get an accurate idea of if you'll make it there.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, so we figured that out. So we basically had to supercharge about every 3 hours. Now, overall, I would say that the navigation and supercharging was probably pretty much flawless 80 to 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. It when you start to get about 20 minutes out, it'll start preconditioning the battery by cooling it or heating it, whatever it needs to do to get to optimal.
Right.
And then when you get there, you can plug in. And I think the quickest supercharge we had was probably from 15% to 85% in like 20 minutes.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good.
How was the build quality of the vehicle?
Surprisingly good.
Okay, so you got a good one.
We did get a good one. The only complaint I have isn't about build quality. It's about tire and wheel choice. Because they are 20-inch. Yeah, I'm looking right there. They're 20-inch wheels, and they have, obviously, EV like efficiency tires on them. That's fine. Sure. The problem I have with it is that there's just a lot of tire noise that comes through, which really...
that's part of the thing of when you go to an EV, you're losing the pulsations and the noise of an engine.
Yep.
So everything else turns up, such as tire noise, wind noise, things like that.
Yeah, wind noise and everything else was actually really good. There wasn't any whistles. There wasn't any excessive noise or vibration of any kind.
Did you get any kind of turbulence or any kind of like fluttering like in the middle of the windshield?
Nope.
Really? Okay.
No, that was all great. The only complaint I had from any form of a build quality or noise standpoint was just, I think if they dropped down to 19 or 18-inch wheels and had a thicker sidewall...
And you can do that.
It wouldn't be nearly as loud.
I've seen people put TE37s on Teslas, which it's a good look. I don't mind it. It's just kind of an interesting choice.
Yeah, so fortunately that part was good, and I do also have to say they have drastically improved the comfort of their seats, because I don't know if you remember the original Model S had tons of complaints with the seats being like basically flat cardboard.
I remember. I have a better memory of the front seats being completely fucking flat too.
Yeah. So these, I never once got fatigued in the 3,000 miles we put on this in 2 weeks.
That's good.
It was fantastic.
Okay.
And all of that worked great.
I'd like to see you do this road trip in another EV. Something like a Mach-E or something, or I don't necessarily want to say ID4, but something else in this bracket.
No, I would love to, and that's actually a potential plan in the future to get a little more experience is something like that. Maybe not a trip of this size, but like another trip to continue the research of this. So as we started pinging all the way up, we did get as far as like almost 100 miles away from the nearest charger. So we did actually push it to places where probably most people would never push an EV or a Tesla out of range anxiety or fear. We went all the way up the west coast of Washington where there's nothing. You're in national forest for about 80, 90 miles straight.
Which is awesome.
No charges. It was beautiful. And that was one of the other surprises about kind of having an EV in general, which was really nice, is that traveling at 30 to 40 miles an hour, we could lower the windows and there's no noise and we can hear everything.
Yeah.
And that was a lovely, like, surreal, melancholic experience. It was just a totally different way of traveling. Because even if you have something like our Golf All-Track, it's still making some noise.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Even though it's not a loud car by any stretch.
It's not a loud car, but there is a difference when you're going to a powertrain that makes actually no noise, and it is just more of a sensation of you traveling through or moving through a space rather than motoring.
Yeah, and so after we got all the way up there, we made a couple stops along the way. We actually ended up making a ton of extra stops, which kind of both further pushed testing the EV-ness of EVs, because you're using more range than you're telling the computer you're using. And on top of that, I think it honestly enabled us to enjoy a few more things just along the way than we normally would, because we were already a little bit more laid back. Since we weren't bonsaiing the trip like you can in a gas car, we already had kind of anticipated every 3 hours we'll probably have to stop to charge anyways. So it actually kind of changed. It
slowed you down.
Yeah, slowed us down, changed the idea of the road trip. And realistically, going there and back, we only spent about an extra 2 hours, I would say, than if we were to be doing it in a gas car.
Sure.
Not that bad, as long as you're paying attention and planning, which, to be honest, the Tesla's kind of the cheat code for that. That's really where I think I understand why people love them so much, is it literally takes all of that away from you and does it all in the computer, pinging you between superchargers, whereas in any other EV, you'd have to be manually planning that shit for the most part.
Yeah. Maybe.
We went over on a ferry from actual Washington to Vancouver Island. We actually went on 3 ferries with the Tesla, which was kind of fun, and went around, and a couple of the guys were super funny because the car is filthy on the front. There's so many bugs. It's hilarious.
Sure. On a white car,
a white car, yeah. And ended up in Vancouver, and were able to get around there. And we even, in Vancouver, we went about a quarter of the way deep into British Columbia, which is huge.
Sure.
And really got up in the mountains. We climbed from the sea level all the way back up to 5,000 feet and back down on 2 different occasions.
Cool.
And it never missed a beat. It honestly did fantastic. I have no qualms with the fact that we were never within a time of wanting more. The problems, which I'll quickly outline, really came down to if you try to, let's say, correct something in the navigation, it'll sometimes screw it up a little bit. They really want you to just put in your destination and trust everything. And it does really well when you do that. But
until
when, for instance, on our first day, we were going to be ending just north of Portland. And it's going to calculate you for whatever is the quickest time with the superchargers. So it would have put us ending there about 40 miles from the nearest charger with only 20% left. So I needed to make sure that I manually plugged in a supercharger that was in just outside of Portland just before we got there, so we had some decent range, because the next station after that wasn't for like another 80 miles. In doing so, I found out that although the navigation is really smart, if you punch in the address and not search it in the navigation, it doesn't recognize it as a supercharger, and it won't precondition, so then you won't fast charge.
Interesting.
So then it ends up taking about 50 to sometimes double the amount of time.
Interesting.
It's still under an hour, but it's like goes from like 20 minutes to 40 minutes. It's a decent difference.
Sure.
And so I found that out. Fortunately, found it out on day 1. But I started to find that out more and more, that if I wanted to manually add in little trips and whatnot, it could trip it up pretty good.
Yeah.
It's definitely not as designed for larger road trips, understandably. Not that many people do this.
It's more for commuting and just if you have your routine, if you have your route already.
Or think like if I was traveling from here to Boise and back, like it's really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like type of like mid-range trips. Doing something like this was definitely a lot more. So that was problem 1. Problem 2 was both a good and a bad thing. I do have to say I am very impressed overall with autopilot.
Okay.
It, even in the night, was very good at keeping lanes, at maintaining stuff. Funny enough, one of the features that we couldn't use was automatic lane change. So although we had autopilot, I couldn't put on the blinker and have it automatically switch lanes. That's tied to the account. You have to manually enable it in the account.
Because FSD.
Yep, exactly. So we had basically, think of it as very, very high-end lane keep assist, auto drive, radar cruise, all combined into one.
Sure.
And that was probably the biggest surprise of that was just the amount of road fatigue that took away. Because we could just turn that on and like still pay attention, but like relax a little. And it would take care of most everything. And the biggest place that was a major benefit was in traffic. Dear God, that was amazing. Just being able to turn that on, let it drive through 20 to 30 minutes of bullshit.
Yeah.
And then I don't even need to think about it.
That's kind of how I feel about radar cruise in general.
Yep.
I do enjoy it on the highway because, especially like the stretch of highway, and I haven't driven radar cruise to here, but I've driven radar cruise a bunch in the past, and I've been through this place quite a few times.
Yeah.
But between Boise and here, kind of around the Jerome area.
Yes.
Where it's just a huge differential of like people are doing 90 plus in the left and they're doing 65 in the middle lane.
Yeah.
And, traffic, slowing down, people from the middle lane coming left, cutting you off. Like that would just make that would make that part of the drive completely brainless. Yeah. Really. There, and also like driving around in a downtown metropolitan area, because I've had things like Subaru Crosstreks and stuff with eyesight, and it'll take you down to 0 and it'll pull right back up with speed if you have a small enough of a cushion of time.
Yeah.
And if you exceed that, you just have to hit a button on the wheel and resume it.
See, and the nice thing with this is that it wouldn't do that. This will come to complete stops. You don't have to do anything to resume it. It'll just auto start.
Even if you're like stopped for like 30 seconds?
We were stopped for more than 3 minutes at one point in Seattle, and it just completely resumed on its own.
That makes sense.
No, it honestly did very well, and I also found out, between doing research and experiencing it, it doesn't use any internet data to do so. It is all just the cameras on the car. It is all on the ground with your eyes, which is really cool. And no, that's good, because then in the occasions you do lose data, you don't like lose features.
I'm sorry, but you're still talking about the FSD or
Yes.
the autopilot?
The autopilot, yes.
It's cameras only.
Yes.
And no LiDAR, which is an issue.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least, I'm not sure if they have any form of radar on the front.
They don't.
Or not. Okay.
No, Teslas are cameras only.
Gotcha. I never had problems with the cameras doing things when it came to the full self-driving scenarios, like maintaining lanes and things like
Sure.
that. I do think that adding radar into that mix would be much better.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons.
Yes, it would.
Which is, well, I think it does use it a little bit. Not like the full stuff on the front of cars, like the bumps, like for instance, the All-Track has. However, they do have a lot of sensors around that when it comes to like distance sensors, but they're not
Sure.
long. They're not long distance is the problem. So it'll sense stuff around you, just not bigger stuff. But getting back to where this became a problem, when you were in autopilot on the freeway, it was pretty much great. However, their safety features, I think, are way too sensitive. There was 3 times where it panic braked, and we don't know why.
Like, so set the scene here.
80 miles an hour, traveling down a completely straight road with nothing around us, panic brake.
Wow.
That happened 3 times. 2 times was not really that much. It just started slowing down. The third one was like probably 60-75% brakes, like
Yeah.
And
Was there anyone behind you?
no.
That's good.
No, there wasn't anybody behind us or around us or anything like that. But that one was a little concerning, but I think I have a synopsis as to what's going on with that. I'll come back to that in just a second. The second thing was, if you're manually driving the car, like normally driving, it sometimes will be way too sensitive of a lane line or something. So like if you're going around a curve, you're going to be closer to the inside of the apex.
Sure.
I would be, let's say, within like 3 to 4 inches of the line. And there was several times where it'd be like, intervention, lane departure detected, and I would feel it start to tug me back in. I was like, no.
So was it doing a little bit of bumper car? Or
What's funny,
like,
if I was in auto drive, like if I was letting it do it, I actually had very little bumper car at all. But in those scenarios, it will try to force me back into the center when it's like, I'm doing a corner. I'm going to want to be on the inside. So that happened probably a total of 12 times where it would freak out about it. Half the time, it didn't actually input any adjustment. It just was like a warning. The other half the time, I would feel it start to like pull me over. Not egregiously. It never like jerked the wheel, but definitely like being way too sensitive with certain lines or road hazards like that.
Interesting.
But getting back to where I think the problem with that is, this isn't a Tesla problem. This was, we'll call it a rental car problem. Ours, it does not have the original windshield. And I have an assumption, this is very well grounded, that it was not calibrated after whenever its windshield was replaced.
Yeah.
Because not only those things I mentioned just a second ago happened, the third thing, which was really annoying, and again, I can't blame Tesla for this because I think the car just was not calibrated. When you go into either cruise, even just regular cruise control, or into autopilot, the wipers go to automatic.
Okay.
And it is locked there. You cannot turn them off because it has to keep those cameras clear.
Sure.
Understandable. Ours is a little dumb. And it was about 25% of the time, if we enabled either autopilot or cruise control, the wipers would just start going. So after about, after like halfway through the second day, we stopped giving a fuck. So we were just driving down the freeway, full sun ablaze, beautiful cloudless day, wipers full speed, just. I'm sure people are like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Oh, Teslas.
So, like, being that that's the only real problem we had, and it's not a Tesla problem. It was really uneventful. The car, honestly, my whole thought process with the car was, is it going to add to the experience or is it going to be a detriment? Like, is the time we're going to have to spend charging or worrying about that going to take away from our fun or not? honestly, I do think it full-handedly added to the experience overall.
Okay.
It made it a lot more quiet, a lot more unique, and having autopilot made the instances where we didn't need to be like driving or doing anything crazy really nice. And I even had autopilot going on some very curvy roads.
Yeah. The first time I drove a Model 3 rear wheel, two-wheel drive long range, I think, or two-wheel drive performance, back in 2018, which is now 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the short time that I was with it, we had FSD, quote unquote, going through East Canyon.
Yeah.
And it held it just fine.
This did as well. I was going through, there was 2 locations where I really tried it out. One was on the road going along a riverbank to get to our first stop. The second one was going around, I don't remember what the lake is named, but it's in the middle of the state park in Washington. And it's a pretty curvy road, probably about 70% of the way towards East Canyon. There was no like U-turns
like
hairpins, but there was good corners that you would generally be slowing down to 20 to 30 to do comfortably. And it did extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
So it overall, I it's kind of funny to say this. In our discussions, we decided we wouldn't like put Tesla out as far as like in our list. We would consider owning a Tesla after this experience because it did work very well. The superchargers are sadly the only good EV charging network.
Yeah, and Tesla has come out somewhat recently saying that they will allow other automakers to adapt to the whole supercharging network.
Yep.
I doubt it would be... I'm sure they would charge enough that it would be probably as expensive or maybe more than filling a car up with gas.
Yes. So actually, speaking of that, how much we spent. So we did 2,862 miles on the trip. Overall, our efficiency was, from what I could read and gather, pretty decent, and everything was pretty average. We spent a total of $198 on supercharging.
Wow.
So
that little. Wow.
So when I read stuff before and was doing research before, people were like, "Oh, it'll cost $30 to $40. Like it will be less than a tank of gas, but not that much less."
That's almost what I pay.
Yes. Looking at it when we're going through it, our most expensive supercharge was $22.
Wow. Okay.
So, but here's the thing: you kind of just have to play the system right, and the navigation will show you how to do that. I think a lot of people, the problem they make is they try to think of it like their phone. The navigation will, for time efficiency and everything else, never tell you to charge beyond 85%.
Right.
Never. Because once you hit 85%, charging slows by almost double or triple.
Yeah.
Because it's a large-ass battery they have to maintain. So it'll always have you bouncing between like 15 and 85 constantly.
Sure.
And if you do that and you don't try to force pushing it over, you'll actually do really good because there's 2 charges when you're supercharging. One is how much electricity you use. The other one is time.
Right.
And if you stay there longer, it's obviously time's trickling up. And if you stay there over 100%, it'll start charging you pretty egregiously.
Sure.
For holding
over 85.
No, over 100. So like if you get there and get to full 100 and then leave the car there, it'll start charging you $1 a minute.
Wow.
I don't blame them because some of these superchargers are pretty busy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like I actually am all for that type of like intervention saying, no, you cannot just hold this up. This is like a gas station.
Yeah. Fill up your car and leave.
Exactly. That was one of the downsides with the app, by the way, not having the app. We had to just manually make sure of that, which was never a problem. I just set a timer on my phone, never became an issue.
Sure.
We had time to go get lunch or whatever. But yeah, so we never experienced high charging rates. Even in Vancouver, where electricity is not as high as California, but it is higher than us, it was still perfectly acceptable.
Sure.
Everywhere was pretty average as far as like cost per kilowatt hour is anywhere from 12 to 15 cents, which is basically the same as I pay for my house. It wasn't bad at all. So I calculated quickly what we would have probably spent in the all-track. We probably would have spent anywhere from $500 to $600.
How much was it to rent the car?
It was $700. So we didn't save money in renting the car, and we knew that up front.
Yeah.
But we did save money on the trip because we paid for the car months ago. So like
so that money was already gone.
Yeah. So like realistically, the only cost we had was that $198. But the funny thing is, it'll basically become a wash because we had to also pay a $250 deposit to rent the car. Fairly normal procedure.
Is this on Turo? Oh no, this is Hertz. Sorry,
this is Hertz. Yeah. So once we'll basically get that $250 back at the same time we get billed for the supercharging. So it'll basically just wash.
Yeah.
Overall, like that experience was really good. As a side note on Hertz, the one complaint I had with it being a rental car simply came down to the fact they are not optimized for EVs yet because we had to wait 4 hours because it wasn't charged.
Oh my God.
So we went to go pick it up Tuesday morning at 8, and they called us about 5 minutes before we got there. Hey, so the car is at our facility. It's not going to be here till around 11. And they also, because this I understand because of the way their system works, they cannot like fill out any paperwork or do anything prior to the car being there.
Right.
So we had to come back at 11, and
that blows.
Even then, it took them 30 minutes to get the car back and have it ready. So, like, it was kind of like, come on, guys. We rented this 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And the lady did tell us 4 months ago, like, our amount of long ranges in the fleet is very few.
Sure.
I'm like, yeah, but...
but I'm making a reservation.
We made a reservation 4 months ago.
This is the whole Seinfeld bit of, like, your job is supposed to hold the reservation.
Yeah. Like, to me as a customer, that is... quite honestly, fucking irrelevant. I made this reservation so long ago with your internal computerized system that it should have had no problem figuring out what it needed to do to get me a car at that time.
Right.
So that was really the only hiccup. We haven't turned in the car yet, but I don't think there'll be any other hiccups. I took a video of everything because of how curved the wheels were and whatnot, just to make sure I documented.
Yeah, so you don't get fucked on the other end.
Yeah, exactly. And so overall, I'm hoping it will end okay, and that first initial delay is the only real problem we'll have from a rental standpoint.
Yeah.
As a quick side note of the trip, though, before I kind of finalize talking about this, the trip was amazing. Vancouver has now become the only city I've ever visited that I would ever consider living in.
Yeah.
It was amazing. All the people were amazing, and like, I'm not actually getting political, but it was amazing to be out of the United States and just see nobody give a single flying fuck. No bumper stickers of any kind, of any party or anything. It was lovely. It was like leaving a vacuum.
Sure. Well, also, I mean, the part of the United States that we also live in is
quite
politically charged.
Yeah, and so just getting out of that and seeing nobody care about anybody else's business, like even on the hikes we went in, everybody was not only super friendly, haha, Canadian joke, but also just was like everybody doing their own thing. And there weren't like on the hikes we went on, like tons of signs everywhere saying stay on trail or like handhold rails or warnings everywhere. It was just everybody was logical and did their own thing and everything was fine.
Yeah.
It was just a breath of fresh air.
That's awesome.
All of that was good. And as a side note of the convention, funny enough, Tesla was there at the convention.
Oh, what were they doing?
So they just had a Model X Plaid and a Model S Plaid.
Okay.
So it was interesting to get to see the newer iterations because the only Model S's I've been in were like the first gen before the refresh of the interior and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So like what? Like 2013 era?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got to see a newer X, and this was the first X I've ever sat in. I've never sat in one.
Do you have the yoke?
The Model S did, not the X.
Gotcha.
Thank God, because I just
yeah. I mean, Lexus is already getting onto the yoke game. I keep on getting Instagram and like Facebook reels of people with like C8 Corvettes that have hacked their wheels up.
I know. Yeah, I'm just like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. It just didn't. It just didn't fit right. It didn't feel good. Yeah, getting to sit in those was kind of cool, and it was kind of cool that they brought them, and they had Steam installed on those, so they had games in there too. It was pretty.
Of course, they did.
It was pretty cool and pretty funny.
I mean, if they're at an LTT thing,
yeah, they're gonna be like trying to pander to their audience. I totally get it. But that was what was kind of cool is that it wasn't just like computer stuff. It was a lot of different technology related things.
Sure.
So it was kind of fun to do that. But as a roundabout way, this was fun. I still absolutely hate the look of the Model Y. I think it looks atrocious. I think it's disgusting.
Oh, really?
I don't like
compared to what? Compared to Tesla's other offerings?
3S or X. I think the X looks less weird than this does.
Interesting. Because I think aside from the S, I think the Y is my favorite.
Even with having it for 10...
Wait. Pull up the front of this. I want to analyze because I think the 3...
Come on. There you go.
To me, the headlights. Well, so first of all of them are missing a grill.
Yes, they are.
Which adds to the look for sure. I mean, yes, there's a little like mouth opening, like where, say, a radiator could be,
And that's where, like, for instance, the condenser for the air conditioner is.
Yeah. I feel like the Y is a more filled out version of the 3.
Here's the thing, like, kind of my rating of Teslas. The 3 is very bland and boring, kind of on purpose because it's cheap.
We also see them all the time.
We also do. This, to me, is like somebody put a Model 3 into Photoshop and stretched certain proportions. And I just did. To me, it just doesn't vibe very well from a look standpoint. I think the Model S looks the best out of all of them by far.
By far, yeah.
It actually does look decent. Like, it's a decent looking car.
Yeah.
The X, I think, would look worse to me if I didn't expect it to be as ridiculous as it is, if that makes sense. I kind of knew that when they were making a 3-row SUV, I was kind of like, okay, it's going to be It's just going to be bulbous. It's going to be ridiculous. Yeah. So I never expected that to look good, and it met my expectations in that aspect, I guess.
Well, I mean, the Y also doesn't have doors that will, explode.
Yes.
Or keep you locked in, or they're very much less problematic doors.
Yes.
This doesn't, I mean, stylistically doesn't look like it's doing anything for the lulls.
It's not. Everything about here is very basic, and actually, as a side note of that, the interior on this is identical to the 3.
They're all the same.
X and S are very different.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, they all follow the same very bland, minimalistic cost savings interior.
So the X and S have roughly the same general interior when it comes to the dashboard. Everything else is a little different, mainly because the X has its weird middle seats and all that stuff, and the like X-wing doors. But they at least have vents that you can position everywhere. One of my other complaints about this was not only I expected the AC and heat to be somewhat weak because they're trying to save electricity. I get it. Jesus Christ. Just the air coming out of an ungodly place in the dash with no way.
Is it like kind of where the defrost would be? Like kind of like back on the dash?
So it comes out right behind the screen, kind of like somewhat where vents would normally be, but there is no way to direct it whatsoever. It just comes out. I read on one of an old review site, they called it like the air magically comes out of the dash where there's no vents, as trying to like almost brand it as a feature, not a bug.
I mean, and I can see somewhat of a reason to do that because you are just trying to condition the air, whether with heat or with cooling.
Oh yeah, it's more efficient.
But
and
what you want is air on you, not necessarily the air around you.
So there is no way to get the air to your face whatsoever.
That
It hits right here at like your nips. It literally hits your nips, and that's the best you can do.
Oh my God.
There's no way to change it. So I hated that.
Boo.
I got more used to the large tablet screen. I hated having only that. I still would rather have a gauge cluster in front of me.
Oh, for sure. Of course.
Yeah. Even though I did get used to it, and I think it's designed.
But remember, Justin, in the future, you won't have to drive.
I know. I think it is designed. That being said, though, I think their tablet is designed much better from a software standpoint than most. It's very functional.
They've always been that way. Even when the S came out in 2012 or 11 or whenever that happened.
And as a final note of this really solidified two of the things that I've always thought about Tesla. Number one, they are the Apple of the car world. They always have been and probably always will be. Because they want your full integrated experience just the same way Apple does, because they don't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Number two, Tesla is a software company, not a hardware company.
If that, I mean, they're really a stock company at this point.
At this point, yes.
Yeah, but they always have been a tech company that makes cars.
Exactly. And it clearly shows. Like, this car is a million lines of code that functions very, very well for what it is. It is not really... there's no part of this car besides the brake pedal and the steering wheel that manually, mechanically control a function whatsoever.
I'm sure those are even completely disconnected from anything.
No, they're connected. It has a steering shaft that goes down to the steering box. Like, it is...
It does.
Yes.
I find that surprising.
Yes, and the brake pedal does go to a master cylinder.
Okay.
But those are the only two things.
Yeah.
Because it also has ways to override those. Like, the steering works the same as any lane keep assist. It just uses the motor that's normally your power steering motor to turn things.
Right.
The brakes have basically the same type of brake setup as my Tacoma, where for the radar cruise and stuff, it just has a little electric motor that can actuate the mechanical brakes.
Right.
So they are still connected, surprisingly, but that's it. Everything else, even the door latches are electronic. Like, there's no other way to control anything else. So really, this car, if it didn't have its code could not function whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other cars, they still wouldn't be able to drive because you need an ECU, but there's functions you could still kind of use in other cars.
And seeing how high end, like, you know, when I say high end, I mean like top of the line things like S-Class Mercedes and BMW 7 Series and like things like that from 20 years ago.
Yep.
Seeing how they hold up or not.
Yep.
It makes me wonder when, you know, even early Model S's and early Model 3s, when they turn like 20, 25 years old, it does make me wonder how that's going to hold up.
Yeah, and I do think I think even though they have plenty of build quality issues, I think one of the things that will hold up well is actually the bodies.
Well, I'm not talking about bodies. I'm talking about like
battery.
Well, not even just that. Like just the shit that you were talking about. Like, you know, how things that are not quite connected. Like they are, but like they have overrides and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, how those will still work. If there's any code degradation, because one thing that can happen, even though SSDs don't fail like hard drives do, this is going to run off of some type of flash memory like that. That can degrade over time.
Yeah.
What happens when that happens?
Yeah,
and you're driving the car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of questions still, but it did kind of bring me around to like this worked a lot better than I thought it would, and I now understand fully like why certain people really love this as an experience, because it really is a cheat code in the EV world. Looking into doing this with a different EV, like you mentioned earlier, is it possible? Yes, because other EVs have actually even faster charging than this.
Yeah.
However, stopping at places that aren't superchargers, we only stopped at like 3 other chargers that weren't superchargers.
Or like Electrify America or EV Go.
One of the 3 wasn't functioning, and that seems to be the norm.
Yeah.
Very inconsistent.
Oh God, Johnny Lieberman from Motor Trend I saw his stories. He had an Ioniq 5 at an Electrify America charging station, which is I think the thing that Volkswagen started because Dieselgate.
Yes,
and he was there for hours, saying like this isn't charging, like it's saying that it's charging, but like literally nothing's happening.
Yep.
People like charging next to him were having issues.
Yeah. So it sucks because I have to give Tesla credit, not even for the cars or for anything else, but for making it not only possible, but easy to do the trip that we did.
Yeah.
That is their biggest benefit at this point.
Credit where it is due. Their whole infrastructure, and everyone's been saying this for a while, but their whole infrastructure really is a selling point, and it, like, you know, points to Tesla for, you know, having a solid infrastructure to keep their cars running.
Yes, it would it have been possible with any other EV? Yeah. Would it have been a pain in the ass? Very much so compared to this, because I would have been having to manually plot all of that.
Yep.
And hope that they work. Because if they don't, to give you an example, with a battery of this size, if you have to plug into the household outlet with the charger, it is 1% an hour. So if this was dead, it would take 100 hours to fully charge off of a regular household outlet. Wow. It is that slow, and that's not a Tesla thing. That's a general EV thing, because your household outlet being 15 amps at 120 volts can only supply so much electricity. It's actually one of the least efficient ways to charge it. You actually end up spending more doing that than going to a fast charger, because if you're to bump up the voltage, because of the way batteries work, the efficiency goes way up drastically with how the battery accepts that charge. So you can kind of get screwed pretty easily if you end up with no other way to charge it than that. And so that's always like the absolute last resort. Fortunately, we never had to use that. If we were with another EV, I don't know if we would have had to use that, but like it very well could have gotten way hairy way quickly. Yeah. So anyways, but that's kind of the round out. Long story short, I'm surprised it did pretty well. There's still problems. It's Tesla.
Sure. And if you're still listening to the podcast at this point, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want to hear more EV content, EV reviews from us, let us know. Reach out to us on Instagram, or you can comment on, I believe it's on Spotify, where I mean, you can leave comments, I think, everywhere, but we really just see the comments through Spotify for podcasters.
Yep.
What sucks is we actually can't respond to them. The only thing that we can do, which like it makes us look shitty.
Yeah.
But the only thing that we can do is make the comments public.
Yeah, that's it. We can't do anything else other than that. So it's kind of a half-hearted. It's almost more reviews than comments at that point.
I guess so. Yeah. So James, I know you comment on basically all of them.
You're awesome.
Shout out James K. You know that's why basically either some comments get posted or not. and that's the reason why we can't even like them. We can't reply or anything, which, like I said, I feel shitty about because I feel like I look like an asshole. There's nothing that we can do on that front. But if you want to see or hear any other like EV content from us, because this is really the first EV thing that we've done or that either of us have done, let us know. I kind of don't want to talk about EVs anymore right now, though.
No. I totally get it. Can we talk about something that's the opposite? And I can show you this. This will be a quick note and discussion.
I'm going to time you.
Okay. While I was gone, I got an interesting phone call from my business partner saying, hey, we have a problem with our largest account. What's that? 3 trucks caught fire.
Oh, no.
Like, burned to the ground.
That's like if you put it in your oven, but you set the oven to clean.
Yes. We still don't know what happened. 2 out of the 3 were ones that we had just cleaned a few days ago. We're in the clear. They're like, we don't think, we're not blaming you. We don't think there's any way you could have done these because they sat for multiple days since you guys touched them.
Well, I mean, what could you have done? What could anyone have done cleaning a truck that would have made it catch fire?
Nothing. Nothing that I can think of. Because the worst that we've ever had is like, okay, if maybe some cleaner accidentally gets somewhere, it'll pop a fuse.
Yeah.
That's theoretically the worst thing. The only things that could cause this are electrical from the alternator back to the battery because there's no fusible link in between there.
Right.
So like large cables, short-circuiting, etc. A battery short-circuiting internally, or I mean, there's very few other things because like diesel isn't flammable like gasoline. It takes a lot to ignite it. Once it's ignited, it goes really well.
Sure.
But it's not like you can hold a lighter up to diesel and it won't ignite like gasoline does.
Right.
So this kind of a thing is wild. And when he said burned to the ground, he didn't even know until he went and checked it out on Friday. And I was like, holy fuck, they are like gone. In fact, some of the wheels in these other trucks, the aluminum melted into the ground. It was hot.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going there tomorrow to see what we can figure out to like help them get a functioning thing, because this bay right here is the wash bay, so it's currently blocked. And being that they can't rule out arson yet, it's now a crime scene.
Jeez. Okay.
So, fun little side note, like I said, just wanted to show you that and be like, holy crap, totally opposite side of the spectrum with not only internal combustion, but diesel, and like the amount of emissions that just offset burning like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And like, because this is an individual podcast, I'm just looking at this image. You can see like a radiator that is flat on the ground. You can see some frame rails. The body, everything is completely fucking gone. Tires are popped off the wheels. You can see engine. But yeah, it is gone.
If you think of how large a semi is, any of that height that you would normally think of is completely melted away because they're made of fiberglass and aluminum. Yeah. Both materials that will just melt.
Sure.
So, yeah, kind of wild.
Jeez. Well, I want to steal an idea from another podcast.
Okay.
Let's hop on Bring a Trailer here.
Okay.
And I want to see what is live right now and if those cars that, or maybe not live, but cars that have recently sold, look at their sale prices, because people out there think that you can buy a car in this day and age and not drive it. Or maybe people 30 years ago, 40 years ago, oh, this is going to go for big money one day. I'm going to, not take the plastic off and, retire on that money. Instead of investing it, like in the stock market, like any big boy should. So let's not go to things that have, or that are still going, because anything can happen at the last minute.
Okay.
I saw the photos from there's a whole photo shoot, that Porsche that just went by.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
911 SC Almerez.
Yeah, click on that, because there's a bunch of other shit that are all going to be like deep 6 figures, some maybe 7-figure cars. There's like a half dozen of these things, but I'm getting sidetracked. These are full race cars from back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, let's go to things that have sold.
Auctions results.
Oh, wow. A 711. Let's try that NSX there, because we've also done NSXs. Okay, so this is a red on cream interior with a black top. It's a NA1. It's a 1991 5-speed NSX.
Original wheels, everything.
711-mile car. It just sold for $181,000.
So this is a Acura NSX. Okay, so its original price, this is the starting, and this is where it gets a little difficult because like it's difficult to find options, especially on cars this old.
Sure.
So starting price was $62,000. Let's just say comfortably this was $70,000. I think that's reasonable.
Fuck it, put in 62.
Okay, so $62,000 inflation calculator, and this is always a fun one to do.
Well, do that, and also inflation calculator, and also if you had put that in the stock market.
Okay, here we go. So if in 1991 I purchased a car for $62,000, that means that adjused for inflation today, it would be about $138,000.
Okay.
Okay, so that is a 124% gain.
Sure.
So about 2.25 times.
Well, okay, so that's a nearly $50,000 loss over what this actually sold for. If you had thrown that money into the S&P,
and that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use this, and this is going to be, it's just for fun. So obviously
Sure.
this isn't going to be much. So this is 31 years at an annual rate of 6%. And let's just say I had no extra annual contribution every year, so
Sure.
it's just the 62.
Yeah.
And for 31 years at 6%. This is, that's painful. Ending balance. Take a guess.
Oh God, is it 200?
More.
300?
More.
Oh my God.
377. So, like, yes, this car just sold for 180,000, but that's only inflation adjusted.
Also, this is like cream of the crop fucking NSX.
This is
here.
the top end of NSX pricing.
Yeah.
With the exception of like special edition ones. Like for regular NSX, this is very top.
Yeah.
So like you only gained $40,000 extra inflation adjusted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Instead of $300,000.
Oh, you get that?
That might be me.
Okay,
got it. Instead of $300,000. That's painful.
Yeah, that hurts.
So
and so you spent that money. You could have gotten more money back if you're actually trying to make a quote unquote investment.
Yep.
And you didn't drive it.
Yeah. This is why I always say there is a bell curve. It is good to keep your miles at a reasonable level for several reasons. Cars do degrade with miles. However, there is a bell curve.
The quality of the miles is actually more relevant than the actual number.
Exactly. If it's cared for, and let's say you're putting on 500 to 1,000 miles a year, that car will actually be very happy and keep the miles pretty low.
Yeah.
Because doing 1,000 miles a year, let's say this, it would have been at about 31,000 miles. That's still mid-low. Somewhat.
That's less than what's on Michael's car.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael's car is very happy.
Yeah.
Mechanically.
It's fucking great.
Like super fantastic mechanically, all things considered. And that's because it was cared for and driven.
Yeah.
This car, now, if it was in a climate-controlled garage that was like humidity-controlled, it's probably fine. It's probably not bad. You could probably go out and start driving this and it wouldn't have any major issues.
You would need tires. I mean, depending on what tires are actually on it.
Yeah, you would need certain things, and it's probably smart to change most of the rubber at this point.
Sure.
But sometimes, like, cars will survive like this that were really well cared for, still had their oil changed every year and stuff like that, and they'll be fine. But a lot of times when you're buying low-mileage cars like this, I've heard both Ed Bullion and Rob Ferretti talk at length that the lower mile cars they have bought have been the absolute basket cases.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because a lot of the people don't care for it like hopefully this one was, where if it was still serviced every year, it's probably fine. But most of them just sit, and so they go for like 4 years without an oil change or service because miles is the only thing in somebody's mind. And they get nothing.
Right.
Everything.
And also, how much has this person spent in storage?
Yep.
Has the car been insured?
Yep.
There's all these other costs.
Registration. So they probably ate away most of that 40 grand benefit, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Really, they probably didn't make any money.
Yeah.
So let's see. What's another one? Let me go back. Now, one that I think might be somewhat interesting on this is if we could find some form of a older Porsche, because I am curious. That's modified, so it's not really relevant. You got to find something stock to get close to what we're looking at. And we're going back with those. Browse all makes and models. Oh, no, that's just going to take me to that.
Yeah.
Recent
550-mile Ford GT. Those have gone up.
Those have, I actually think it might be closer than we think, though. So let's see, because I know they've gone way up from their MSRP, but I'm curious to see this. So this is a 550-mile 2005 Ford GT in the most common color.
Is this the one that Larry just did?
It might be. No, because Larry's didn't have the sticker. This still has the sticker on the Ford GT on the steering wheel.
So I've heard this anecdotally, but there was a good amount of cars because Ford couldn't fucking give them away at 150.
Yep.
That some people bought two.
Yep.
For I don't know if it's a 2-for-1 or what, but
an astonishing deal.
Yeah, and there are some people out there that bought two. They kept the covers and the seat covers and all the stickers on one car, and they drove the other one.
Yeah, so this is the most.
Where's this from? What part of the country is this car from?
Let's see.
Michigan.
Yeah. So this is the most common color, white with blue stripes.
Yeah, it's a great car. Looks awesome.
I still want to experience one of these one day.
I rode shotgun in a red with white stripe one years ago, and it was awesome. And that car has since gone.
Yep.
I wish I jumped on an opportunity to maybe drive it because I've only heard amazing things from it.
Well, and fun fact, these Ford GTs still hold the world record for a street legal Texas mile speed car.
Well, yeah, because the stock block can handle triple the horsepower.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can throw at these things, and they will just take it.
Yeah. Some dude did 300 in one.
Yeah, the current record I think was 323.
Yeah.
And that is wild because everything else is mostly stock. He changed out tires for higher speed rating, and then there's obviously a shit ton of engine work. But like the rest of the chassis and shit is pretty much stock.
Well, if you pop the hood on one, you see the scaffolding in there.
Yeah, like
it's nuts.
They really went out of their way to like, I'm sure they lost tons of money selling them for 150 each because it was just a marketing stunt.
Sure.
At the end of the day. Yeah. Anyways, so this sold for $455,555. That is a lot of fives.
So if you put 149 grand, because that's basically, I mean that was base.
Yeah.
The Macintosh sound system was like $5,000.
Yeah.
If you got one of the no stripe ones, was that extra?
Stripes were extra.
Stripes were extra. There's another $5,000 figure in there somewhere.
So let's basically say 160.
Yeah.
I think 160 is safe. So let me get this one going. So 2005, let's see, 5, 10, that's 18 years. We'll calculate this. Boop. And then let me go to the inflation calculator. So if you paid in 2005... $160,000 for this beautiful Ford GT. In 2023, it would have been about $249,000 inflation adjusted.
So this beat inflation.
This did beat inflation by quite a significant amount with selling for $455,000.
Yeah.
However,
oh God, are we talking millions?
Yes.
Okay.
However, if you put 400, or sorry, I did this wrong. Never mind.
I was gonna say,
I put that price into the inflation adjustment.
That's aggressive.
Wow! Holy shit!
Are we still talking millions?
We are. No, it's more impressive than that. We are talking within $1,000 of that price.
Wow!
So if you bought a Ford GT back when it was new, parked it like this guy did, you actually matched what you would have gotten at a 6% rate every year with no extra in.
Wow!
So this car basically matched a stock market average contribution.
Okay, so we found one.
We found one. Exactly. And also, part of the reason we probably found one is because it wasn't that long ago. I think the further back you go, the more wild the variations will get. You'll get some that'll probably be stupid high.
Let's find some shit from like the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can kind of check a couple of different eras.
But that's custom though. Like
no. There's that Porsche right there.
Okay, so a 97 911 turbo. So this is a second to last year of air cooled.
No, this is the last air cooled year because in '98 is when the first 996s came out.
Okay, so it's a 16,000 mile 97 911 turbo.
Speed yellow, 911 turbo.
It's on those are Fuchs, right?
No,
those are not the Fuchs. Those are the Twists. I can't remember. They have a name. I've heard the
turbo
name.
twist. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I saw Tech Art was mentioned up there. Hold on, scroll back up a little bit. Tech Art
pedal covers.
Oh, never mind. Justin was scrolling. But...
I know. And it has 16,000 miles. It looks to be really well.
It looks awesome.
Yeah,
it's barely been driven.
Yeah, exactly. Looks great. Interior.
Wow, those are sick pedal covers, bro.
I know, right? You probably spent $1,000 because they're Tech Art.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so let me actually look up 1997 Porsche 911 Turbo MSRP and see if I can find a rough idea. Okay, so a 1997 911 Turbo S Coupe, which is
this is a non-S.
This is a non-S. Okay, so that's not going to be the right price. Let me keep scrolling a little bit. That's still Turbo S. Yeah, the base Carrera in that year started for 66. Obviously, this is not that.
It's very much not that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I'm mainly finding people if either referencing the Carrera or referencing the Turbo S.
Interesting.
I'm going to assume and think that I'm going to be pretty close and say that the regular Turbo is 140, so about $13,000 less than an S.
Okay.
Do you think that sounds about right?
Sure. Fuck it.
Yeah. So let's say that this individual probably paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $140,000 in 97 to get this car.
Mm-hmm. 150.
Being that it does, I'm sure the yellow was an extra charge. Like it does look like it's mildly optioned.
Yeah, and I do know that there were still wait lists for some supercars like this back in the 90s.
Yeah,
the NSX had a wait list for 2 years on the very first couple of years of its run.
Yep.
And I know that people have paid markup well before the last few years.
Yes,
markup is actually not really anything new.
It's just worse.
it's just it's everywhere. So yeah, you could say 140, you could say 150.
Cool. I'll go 140 just for the fun of it to make it a little bit more conservative
Raise
estimate.
stakes.
Mm-hmm. So in 97, inflation adjusted for 2023 dollars, that individual paid $266,000 for that car.
Okay.
If they would have dumped that same money into the same 6% yield,
The 140?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
636.
Yeah.
Still didn't even come close. Like this car sold for $307,000, so they got halfway there, just about. But
16,000 miles. It's not comically low like that NSX or the Ford GT, but like the car deserves more than that.
But still, selling for $307,000 versus the $266 inflation adjusted. Again, they're still only about $40,000 above, which they probably spent that in maintenance and regular upkeep over those years anyway. So they broke even.
Sure.
Like they didn't spend any more, or they didn't make any money.
Yeah. Okay, let's find an old one now. Something that's actually like
legitimately old.
Yeah.
Let's see. A Dino.
There you go.
Yeah, 1972.
Though I knew they were getting popular, but goddamn.
Yeah, so 72 Ferrari Dino 246 GTS with, let's see, where's the miles? 51,000 miles shown. That's understandable that it says shown because old cars,
TMU.
5 digits. Yep.
But it probably wasn't driven that much.
No, exactly. I'm sure it probably is around 51,000.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's fairly accurate.
Yeah, it's not TMU.
Yeah, so it's a yellow Dino. Looks to be well cared for. Looks to
clean.
be lovely. Yeah, like not bad at all.
Yellow on black.
Mm-hmm. Now to see if I can find the MSRP. This will be fun. So 1972 Ferrari Dino 246 GT MSRP. These are ones where it might start to get a little wild. So the the MSRP of this car, of this Dino, was meant to be identical to a Porsche 911 of the era, because that's kind of what they were trying to do with the Dino range, was be somewhat competitive with, things that were lower tier than them.
Okay.
So it was $14,500.
If you put $14,500 in the S&P.
Oh, not 1072. Sorry, we're not going back to the dark ages.
Nope.
Let me calculate this first for inflation, so we get that number. 14,500 in 2023. That's $105,000.
Okay.
So actually, still kind of like mid-level 911.
Yeah.
Of now.
Yeah.
So now let me go $14,500. This would be 72. This would be 51 years. In that same 6% account, we have another winner, and not by a small amount.
Really?
So that $14,500 for 51 years over 6% would net you $268.
Oh wow! So this actually beat the market pretty well, because this sold for $630.
And also the crazy thing about these is a lot of these Ferraris didn't start selling for good amounts until well past like 2005.
Oh, even in 2005, even during the economic downturn, these were like really, really cheap.
And so a lot of the
308s didn't start get popular in the collector market really until probably the past 5 years or so.
Well, and so a lot of these, the Dinos, the cheaper Ferraris, and even some of the nicer ones were still like under the triple digits or under the six figures for a while. And this one probably
I remember $30,000 308s in like 2013, like when air cooled were like getting popular. Like Ferrari still actually hadn't really caught up yet.
So it's very likely that this thing probably stayed somewhere around that $14,500 range, maybe through the 80s even. Like it didn't. It probably just stayed at that cheap car range. And then finally started to go crazy. But like, yeah, I mean, it's crazy that this sold for $630 and it's not even a low miles car. 51,000 on one of these.
Yeah.
Like, that's just wild.
I don't think it's worth it, but I also haven't driven one, so I don't know.
Like, I have no clue. It looks great, and I'm sure it probably sounds great and has some lovely feelings about it.
Sure,
630 grand? Not really. What's the original color as well? Okay, so it comes with a bunch of documentation and shit. Like, that's cool. But, like, still not low miles. It's still very much a driven car.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I do think it's cool.
This is probably just below preservation quality.
Yeah, I do think it's cool that it still sold for that much. But it's a car that actually got used.
What is that white thing in the lower corner?
This one?
Yeah. This is an active... Oh, it's an old Fiat 500. 1970 Fiat 500. Oh, $7,500.
Let's see if we can find this one. I doubt it. 19.
It ends in less than 2 hours, so by the time you hear this will be gone.
Yeah, cute little car. I mean,
a little martini stripe down the middle.
7,500 to 10 grand for that would actually be kind of fun. Like for what it is. I think you could.
I'd love to do a swap on it.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, driving it, having it be sort of a time capsule to the late 60s, early 70s. Like, yeah, sure, but. I mean, also, if you threw a Gixxer motor in there, that would be a rocking good time.
Yeah, let's see. This one might be hard to find an MSRP on. Because collector car value, let's see if this one has any idea.
The grill on that is just awkward.
I know. I mean,
it's like it's gritting a seat that's like,
I don't know. Let's see, MSRP. Yeah,
these were supposed to be really cheap.
Yeah, I'm sure this one was under $1,000 back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It was
or maybe around 1,000.
Yeah, 15. It was definitely meant to be an around town runabout that the average man could afford in Italy. Yeah, I'm struggling to find it off of just a quick search, so I am going to randomly assume 1,000.
I would say 15.
Gotcha. We'll put in 15. I do think like. Those might be a little bit high because also this wasn't available in the States, so like it would be
but they were available around Europe though.
Yeah, like currency conversions, lots of other stuff. This one's really going by the seat of the pants, but that's fine.
Sure.
We'll put in 1,500 and 1970. Calculate. Okay. even if it's 1,500, which I think might be a little on the high end of this, it would still only be $11,800. That's a cheap car.
That is a cheap car.
A cheap car, especially brand new.
My car's worth more than that.
Mm-hmm. And investment wise, let's see.
Oh God, yeah,
this will be hilarious.
It's gonna blow it out of the water.
Yep, 450. This one would be 53 years. Calculate. It did blow it out of the water, but it's still not a huge number because it started with a pretty low number.
Yeah.
32,000.
Oh, that's less than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, same here.
I thought it was going to be six figures.
So, obviously, if this car sells for around 10,000, being it has just a day like a couple hours left.
Yeah.
It might hit 10,000. It might not. It could even just stay at 7,500. But either way, this individual, it's probably on its third or fourth owner now anyways, but nobody really won.
Yeah.
Everybody probably sold it for around the same inflation-adjusted amount and, like, just kind of kept it good. Like, probably nobody lost their ass on this, which is cool.
Yeah.
But everybody probably sold it for roughly the amount that inflation adjusted to it.
Yeah.
Because if it does go for around 10,000 inflation adjusted, its original $1,500 alleged purchase price was only 11,700. So, like, nobody really lost.
Yeah.
It's just they didn't win by putting it in the stock market. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised we had two wins. I'm not surprised the Ford GT did pretty much
those
identical.
have had a really strong come up in the past 2 years.
And it was just more surprising that it was like almost within $1,000 of matching what a 6% would do.
Yeah.
The Ferrari is kind of wild. Like 2.5 times more money than if you would have had it in the stock market.
Those over the past, I think, 18 months or so have been like really, really fucking strong. Like for reasons that I don't really understand either. Because it's not like 308s and 328s and 348s. I mean, 348s are engine out cars.
Yes.
355s are obviously engine out cars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the ones that my brain would think those would be more valuable because they are modern enough to have, well, they're old enough to offer an experience you can't get today.
Yes.
And they're modern enough where they won't necessarily break all the time. I mean, 328's more than 348's for sure.
But they at least all have, I think all of those years would have like fuel injection and some basic things.
Like Bosch.
Yeah, so like somewhat better than a carburetor in that you don't have to constantly tune it, but like, more dependable for starting and basic things.
Yeah, because I think G-Body 911s, Countach, and like 328s, like they all have like the same fuel injection.
That was like Bosch Multitronic, whatever it was called at the time.
Yeah.
Very notorious for being a pain in the ass to work on, but still somewhat more reliable than a carburetor.
Well, and they were also cars that, because they were not driven as much, and when they were driven, like a lot of the case, like with Countach and also with 328, they have so much fucking oil in them that they need so long to warm up that people just think like, oh, well, this car, they all just kind of drive like this. They all kind of just drive like shit. And so they weren't cared for as much back in the day. And so people let things sit, they let things rot. And now that people are starting to buy these cars now, there's more of a market for unfucking them.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying that this 1970 Fiat falls under that category. I scratch my head about the Dino, though. But I've also never driven one, so I don't know like what they're really like.
I know. I think that's where the difficulty is at that point, that car, the reason its value is what it is, has nothing to do with the driving experience.
Right.
It is now a piece of art or like a piece of history, more or less.
Yeah.
You're not buying that car to drive it, even though it looks like it has been driven, which I love. Again, 51,000 miles.
And the current owner is probably going to drive it.
And that's great. You're buying that car because you're one of now a very select few people that owns a driver miles, so you don't have to be scared of the miles, fully functioning Dino. Like, you could really both use it and still happily sit on your investment somewhat.
You're also checking a box in your collection.
Exactly. You're owning, let's say that maybe graciously there's 50% of those left, and that's probably there just because those cars were cared for better than the average car. And let's say that there might be only 3,000 of those left.
Sure, there is that.
You're owning a very select few of that specific car that runs as well as it does and can do what it does.
And who knows, we could have had a thing like what was happening in the second half or so, or the third quarter of 2020, when rich dudes were getting drunk online and just getting into like heated
bidding wars.
Yeah, exactly. There could have been a bidding war happening here. So I mean, we don't know.
We don't know. It was. I mean, yeah. I think the only way I can truly understand that is looking at some of the computer components I have. Some of them are not worth, like, there's no functional gain that you get from spending more. What you get is either maybe some quality of life upgrades or like some special edition type thing. Like, that's where that car sits. And that's where I think most of these sits. There's a certain point where most of these cars go well past their the value proposition of the driving experience. And that's where it gets difficult because there's no calculable thing. You can't calculate how good that is. You can't measure G's or whatever to like prove that, like, for instance, that 911 race car we saw at the beginning, which wasn't part of this experiment, is like worth that money. That car you can go through and like really look at, what is this car good at? There's numbers to show you.
And there's also racing pedigree with those as well.
Yep. Whereas that Dino, it's like, oh, somebody just has to really want that to fill a spot in their collection, like you said, or because that car was special to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it gets a little crazy.
Anyways, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, not really.
Cool. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Exhibition of Speed podcast. We will be next. We will be next week.
We will next week be.
We will be back next week. I've only had one cup of coffee today, and didn't sleep very well last night. So
Nice.
We'll be back next week with more of this. I'd like to keep on doing more of these, like, beating the stock market or beating inflation kind of games with Bring a Trailer. We'll tune in and just see what else they have to offer. And I don't really have any drives or anything planned as far as like car review stuff, and actually have a backlog of like 4 or 5 videos to put out. So I'll get through those and put those out when they come out. And that's all I have. So.
That's all I have too. So
all right, cool. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.